There might be more stuff with that. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but the Storm account has been teasing it, and sources are saying that it is in the works, but we'll get to that first. We'll get to that later. I apologize. There's other things that happened over the past week that we need to address because it didn't look so positive on paper at first. So back on the 31st of January, the Storm made a major trade, sending forward Kia Nurse and the 4th overall pick in this year's WNBA draft to the Los Angeles Sparks in exchange for a 2026 first-round pick. So if you look at that on paper, right, ignore anything else, any other context or any information that you've gathered now, and think a first-round pick you're not going to be able to use for 2 years for a veteran forward and the 4th overall pick in what could be one of the most talented drafts in WNBA history. You think, what the hell is Seattle doing? But we'll give some context to this because, obviously context is always important. There's always a bigger fish going on. Kia Nurse had a pretty decently sized contract. The Storm had to get rid of it. It comes at the cost of the 4th overall pick. Not ideal necessarily. Again, it could, depending on who declares for this year's draft out of the college, Cameron Brink, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers. There could be a ton of talent coming into the WNBA this year via the draft. It depends, though. Not all of them are for sure committing to this year's draft. So it could be a wild card with the true value of that pick. But it's still a valuable asset, and the Storm sent it away. As I mentioned, they had to do so. They had to get rid of that pick in order to dump Nurse's salary. They do get a first-round pick out of it in a few years, which is nice. First-round picks are always nice. But again, a lot of folks were like, why is this happening? Why are you sending away a veteran forward and the 4th overall pick? With that trade, the Storm opened up 2 max contract slots so they could sign 2 really big-name free agents and 2 veteran slots. That came to fruition when on the 1st of February, the first day that WNBA free agency was open, they signed Skylar Diggins-Smith to a max contract. Diggins-Smith is, when healthy and when she's available, one of the best guards in the WNBA, a true floor general. She's set to begin her 10th WNBA season this year, having proven herself as one of the best point guards in the league, posting career averages of 16.7 points, 4.9 assists, and 2.9 rebounds per game, in addition to 1.3 steals per game. She is one of just 10 players in the league's history to score at least 4,200 points and record at least 1,250 assists, doing so in just 251 games, 45 fewer than the next closest player. In each of her last 5 seasons played and 6 times across her career, she's finished in the top 10 in both scoring and assists. She's one of just 3 players in the history of the league to rank the top 10 in both categories at least 6 times. So this was a big deal. She joins former Notre Dame teammate Jewel Lloyd, where she played her senior season with a freshman Lloyd in 2012 to 2013. The duo posted a 35-2 record, including a perfect 16-0 mark in Big East play and reaching the NCAA semifinals. There's more. I could keep going about Diggins-Smith, but then we just kind of continue to ramble on. She's a 5-time gold medalist while representing USA, most recently in the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. This was a big get. When we were at exit interviews and even after the last game of the year for the Storm, there was talk about adding a point guard and adding firepower next to Jewel Lloyd. This knocks out both of those to an extent, and you still got a max contract deal that we'll talk about in a second that may or may not be confirmed. I got to check that in a second. But again, this is a big deal. You've got one of the best combination of guards to start in the WNBA already, and there's still the rest of free agency to go forward with. We're only a few days into it, and the draft, which you still got picks in the draft. It's not the 4th overall pick, but you still have the ability to add some young talent as well through the entry draft. It's a big deal. Again, you knock out the point guard. That's something that Seattle wanted to add, an established point guard and star power to get back to the playoffs, to get back to title contention, and you do that with Skylar Diggins-Smith. Really quickly, before I talk about that other piece of news. On February 4th, Jewel Lloyd was named to the USA's Olympic qualifying team for the upcoming Olympics, which is exciting. You know, again, Jewel Lloyd, the talent that she is, having signed a 2-year deal at the end of last season, re-upping on Seattle, showing her loyalty to the city, continuing to add to that resume and looking to represent the USA on international stage. Pardon me, not just national. We'll see if it's confirmed. I don't imagine that it is quite yet, but reports tell us that Nneka Ogwumike, forward Nneka Ogwumike, who we've talked about 2 weeks ago, oh no, it's just last week, who had a visit here with Seattle, had limited her favorites to Chicago, Seattle, and New York. Chicago, I mean, Nneka wants to compete, wants to win now. Chicago's not in the position to do that right now. She ruled out Chicago this morning, and she is reportedly finalizing a deal to join the Seattle Storm. So that would fill up your 2 max contract spots. Again, we go back to it. I had so many people, why are you trading the 4th overall pick? Why are you trading Kia Nurse? So you could add Skylar Diggins-Smith and Nneka Ogwumike. Chestnut checkers sometimes. I'm more of a checkers guy myself. I'm not that smart. So that's not finalized quite yet. But sources do tell Circling Seattle Sports that that is in the works as of right now, and that would be big. You've got a starting 5 of Skylar Diggins-Smith, Jewel Lloyd, Jordan Horston, Nneka Ogwumike, and Ezi Magbagor. You can't help off of any of those players. And then you've got talent like Joyner Holmes, Sammy Whitcomb, Mercedes Russell coming off the bench, let alone players like Jade Melbourne, who have been performing excellent over in Australia this offseason. This WNBA offseason, I apologize. So it's exciting. Again, we've got to get that officially finalized first, but per our sources, that is being finalized right now. That might happen by the time that this comes out. We'll see. But that's big. I mean, this immediately moves Seattle from being one of the worst teams in the WNBA last year record-wise to an immediate contender. You know, you still got to fill out the rest of the roster. You're likely looking at an 11-player roster. The max roster size is 12 players in the WNBA, but I mean, this is a big flip, you know, in terms of where you were going to be rebuilding after you learned that Breanna Stewart was heading to New York and not re-signing here in Seattle after Sue Bird retired. So we're just through, 3 segments now, and I mean, it's been really exciting.